Did you know that your brain never truly ever shuts off? Even when you're asleep, your brain remains highly active. During sleep, it organizes memories, processes emotions, it even strengthens your learning. In fact, some areas of the brain are more active during dreaming than when you're actually awake. Your brain works the night shift, even when you think you're doing absolutely nothing. This is On the Couch with Dr. Ty. Welcome back. This is On the Couch with Dr. Ty, and I'm Ty. Today I hope that we can dive into human development, how we grow, change, and evolve throughout life. What if I told you that the person you are today began with a single microscopic cell? That before you even spoke your first word, your brain was already forming millions of neural connections every second? Or that your personality, relationships, and even the way you handle stress have been influenced by experiences stretching all the way back to your earliest years? Well, human development is one of psychology's most fascinating subjects because it asks one profound question: how do we become who we are? From our first heartbeat in the womb to our final years of life, we are constantly growing, adapting, learning, and changing. Today, I hope we take a journey through the psychology of human development. We'll start from conception to older adulthood. We'll explore how our bodies, brains, emotions, and relationships and the identities evolve across the lifespan and discover why development never truly stops. Let's begin. Developmental psychology is the scientific study of how people change and remain the same throughout the lifespan. Development isn't limited to only our childhood. It includes physical growth, brain development, thinking and learning, emotional development, social relationships, moral reasoning, identity, and healthy aging. One of the most important lessons in developmental psychology is that development is lifelong. We continue learning, adapting, and changing from birth through older adulthood. One of our psychology's oldest questions is: are we shaped more by our genes or by our environment? That's that nature versus nurture debate. Well, genes influence traits such as eye color, height, and aspects of temperament. The environment includes our family, culture, education, nutrition, friendship, life experiences. Today, psychologists generally agree that development results from an ongoing interaction between nature and nurture. Our biology provides possibilities while our experiences help shape how those possibilities unfold. Let's talk about prenatal development, where it all begins. Development begins at conception, when a sperm fertilizes an egg to form a zygote. And prenatal development occurs in three major stages. The germinal stage, which is about weeks 1 and 2, that's when the fertilized egg rapidly divides and travels to the uterus. It's where implantation occurs. Many people don't yet realize pregnancy has begun during this first stage. The embryonic stage follows that around weeks 3 to 8. And this is one of the most critical periods of development. Why? It's because our major organs begin to form. The neural tube develops into the brain, and the spinal cord. The heart starts beating only a few weeks after conception. Because organ systems are forming, the embryo is especially vulnerable to harmful influences such as certain medications, alcohol, infections, and environmental toxins. Then we reach the fetal stage. That's about 9 weeks to when it's about time to give birth. Growth is usually accelerated during this time, and the brain develops rapidly, and the sense begins functioning. By the third trimester, the fetus can respond to sounds, light, and touch. The foundations for the future learning have already started to become established. So, you've heard people talk about those first 2 years. Well, the first incredible 2 years are marked with astonishing growth. During infancy, babies learn to recognize familiar faces, sit, crawl, walk, understand language, speak to their first word. They start to form emotional attachments. A newborn's brain contains billions of neurons, billions with a B, and the connections between these neurons multiply rapidly throughout their experiences. Early interactions with caregivers help shape brain development and emotional security. So, we lend ourselves with this emotional security to a term John Bowlby coined, attachment, the power of early relationships. So, psychologist John Bowlby proposed attachment theory, and he suggested that early emotional bonds with caregivers provides a foundation for later relationships. There was some research also done by Mary Ainsworth that identified several attachment patterns. There was secure attachment, and that's when children viewed their caregivers as safe base from which they could explore the world, and then they are comforted when caregivers return for a brief separation. There's insecure attachment. Some children become overly anxious, avoid closeness, or show inconsistent responses to caregivers. An attachment is not destiny, but early caregiving experiences can influence emotional regulation, trust, and relationships later in life. Between ages 2 and 6, children experience extraordinary development. Language expands rapidly. Imagination flourishes. Motor skills start to improve at this period. Children become increasingly independent. This period also involves learning social rules, emotional expression, as well as self control. Jean Piaget, who was a cognitive development psychologist, transformed our understanding of children's thinking. He proposed 4 stages of cognitive development. The first stage is what he coined sensory-motor stage. That's from birth to around 2 years. That's when infants learn through sensory experiences and movement. One major achievement is object permanence. The understanding that objects continue to exist even when they're out of sight. That's why peekaboo is so much fun at this age. When you cover your eyes, a child who has not met object permanence believes that when you cover your eyes, you've actually disappeared, and then you've reappeared when you've uncovered your eyes. Then there's pre-operational stage, which is 2 to 7. Children develop language and symbolic thinking. However, the reasoning is often egocentric, meaning they may have a difficulty seeing situations from other people's perspectives. Concrete operational follows pre-operational, and that's from 7 to 11 years. That's when logical thinking begins to emerge. Children understand conservation, classification, and cause and effect relationships involving concrete objects and experiences. Formal operational stage is around age 12 and beyond. Adolescents begin thinking abstractly. They can reason about hypothetical situations, solve complex problems, and sometimes even consider future possibilities. Jean Piaget emphasized that children actively construct knowledge rather than passively absorbing information. Let's talk about school age children. And school age children continue to refine their academic skills, friendships, self esteem, problem solving, teamwork. During these years, peers become increasingly important. You got to have your friends. Children also begin comparing themselves to others, which can influence confidence as well as their motivation. Supportive relationships with family, teachers, and peers help promote healthy development. When we reach adolescence, that's when we have a profound physical and cognitive and social change. We like to say that this adolescent stage is a time of transformation. Puberty triggers hormonal changes that influence growth and sexual maturation. Meanwhile, the brain continues developing, especially the prefrontal cortex, and that's that area that is responsible for planning, impulse control, and decision making. Interesting enough, the emotional centers of the brain often mature earlier than systems responsible for self regulation. This is what helps explain why teenagers may sometimes make impulsive decisions despite understanding potential consequences. That's why sometimes you send a child to juvie, even though they did something you feel like they should have known better than trying them as an adult. A psychologist by the name of Erik Erikson proposed 8 psychosocial stages across the lifespan. He was very, very definitive in coming up with identity development. One of the most important occurs during adolescence. We call that identity versus role confusion. Young people explore questions such as, who am I? What do I believe? What should I be when I grow up? Where do I belong? Where do I fit in? Successfully navigating this stage contributes to a stronger sense of who you are, a stronger sense of identity development. When you begin to emerge into young adulthood, it often involves major life transitions. Sometimes we reach the higher education, careers, marriage and long term relationships, parenthood, financial independence. Erikson described this stage as intimacy versus isolation. The challenge is developing close, meaningful relationships while at the same time maintaining one's individual identity. When we reach middle adulthood, Erik Erikson says, we start to think about things like career development, parenting, mentoring, community involvement, caring for aging parents. Physical changes may become more noticeable, but many adults reach peak levels of expertise, emotional regulation, and life satisfaction during this middle adulthood. Erik Erikson coined this stage the central task of generativity versus stagnation. And generativity involves contributing to the future generations through parenting, mentoring, teaching, volunteering, or just creative work. Older adulthood is contrary to a lot of myths, tells us that aging does not mean constant decline. Many older adults remain intellectually active, socially engaged, and emotionally resilient. Although certain aspects of processing speed may be slow, accumulated knowledge, wisdom, vocabulary, and life experiences often remain strong, even continue to grow. Healthy aging is generally supported by good sleep hygiene, regular physical activity, lifelong learning, strong social relationships, balanced nutrition, and mental stimulation. The final stage of Erik Erikson is the psychosocial challenge, or we like to call that integrity versus despair. Older adults reflect on their lives. Those who view their lives as meaningful often experience integrity, a sense of acceptance and or fulfillment. I've made it. This is where I'm supposed to be and I'm happy with it. Those who focus primarily on regret may experience despair. I'm not who I wanted to be. I'm not where I wanted to be. I wish things could have been different. No matter how they turn out, I still am not successful or happy with where I am. This stage highlights the importance of purpose, resilience, and maintaining meaningful relationships throughout life. So, the brain never stops changing. Childhood features rapid growth and the formation of neural connections. Adolescence involves pruning and unused connections and strengthening of frequently used pathways. Adulthood continues to demonstrate neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and reorganize through learning and life experiences. This means people can continue to develop new skills, form new memories, and adapt throughout life. One of the most encouraging discoveries in developmental psychology is a concept that we like to call resilience. And resilience is the ability to adapt positively despite adversity. Sometimes we have protective factors that include supportive relationships, problem solving skills, optimism, emotional regulation, access to resources. Resilience doesn't eliminate hardship, it helps people recover and continue growing despite their limitations and the challenges that are set forth. Here's an important and amazing fact about human development that I found. A baby's brain forms more than 1 million new neural connections every second during early development. The human brain continues developing into mid 20s, particularly the prefrontal cortex. By age 3, many children have already learned thousands of words. Adults continue forming neural connections throughout life, especially when learning new skills. And maintaining strong social connections has been consistently associated with better physical health, mental health, and longevity. So, why does all this talk about human development even matter? Well, understanding development helps us become better parents, better teachers, better healthcare professionals, better leaders, better friends, better mentors. It also encourages compassion. Every person is shaped by a unique combination of biology, relationships, opportunities, culture, and life experiences. Recognizing this helps us to appreciate both the similarities and the diversity of human development. So, every stage of life brings new opportunities for growth. The infant learning to walk, the child discovering how to read, a teenager searching for their identity, even the adult building a family or a career, or the older adult sharing wisdom, giving some old knowledge to the younger generation. Development is not simply about getting older, it's about continually becoming, continually learning, increasing resilience. The remarkable truth is that growth truly never ends. As long as we continue learning, adapting, making social connections, connecting with friends, family, finding meaning in all our new experiences, trying things new, we continue developing. As long as we continue to grow, we can stay curious, embrace lifelong learning, and remember, every chapter of life offers another opportunity to grow. Until next time, stay safe and stay smart. This is On the Couch with Dr. Ty.